It says in the book of Hebrews that Jesus endured the cross for the joy set before him. So why is it that he's in the Garden of Gethsemane sweating blood from how distraught he is, asking for the cup to be taken from him? We're stuck asking questions in the Garden of Gethsemane like, is Jesus suddenly afraid? Is he suddenly acting out of the flesh, that his spirit is willing but his flesh is weak, like he told Peter? Is he wavering, or is it no longer a joy set before him? Now it's burdensome? When you read the Gospels, you see he continuously is telling his disciples, hey, this is going to have to happen in order for, all things to be fulfilled. He's been predicting his death. He's been predicting this for a week now in Jerusalem, saying that the religious leaders and the political leaders are going to take him and they're going to crucify him. So if it is only an issue of he's afraid of suffering or the wrath of God and having to drink the cup of wrath for us on our behalf, it leaves too many open questions that causes me to wonder, is there something deeper happening here that maybe is on the other side of that sword? Maybe on one side you have the judgment and the wrath, and on the other side you have something deeper going on, and that would also explain and expand as to why Jesus is just absolutely beside himself in complete anguish in the Garden of Gethsemane. When you read the Gospels and you come to Gethsemane, this is the second time that a cup is being mentioned, that now Jesus is asking for this to be taken away. Before that, at the Last Supper, he takes a cup and he says, this is the blood of the new covenant, my blood, that I am pouring out for you. Take and drink it. This is not the first time that the blood of the covenant is used as a phrase. It goes back to Exodus 24, when Moses pours out the blood of the covenant. He's consecrating the people. He's consecrating the altar. He is not saving them, but consecrating them. And so Jesus is taking that same language and applying it to himself and saying, this is the blood of the new covenant. Why is Exodus important here? If you go back to Exodus and you look at Exodus 19, this is Sinai. This is the cloud descending, the people at the base. God starts speaking. They're like, Moses, how about you talk to him? Because this is a little bit scary. And when you read the passage, there's a bunch of symbols and language being used that reflect Jewish weddings. Let me give you a couple examples. The huppah, this is the cloud that descends when the bride and groom are getting married. There's a huppah over top of them. That's what the cloud represents in Sinai. There's a ketubah. This is a marriage pact. This is a covenant. This is a contract, if you will. And that would be the 10 Commandments. The groom, and especially the tradition back in Jesus' day, the groom would take a cup and hand it to his bride, and the bride would drink of the cup to say, I would rather die than to be without you. And here we see Jesus is offering a cup and saying, drink of this. This is wedding language. Now he's in a garden and he's wrestling over a cup that he has to drink. So then the gospel writers take that wedding language and they embed it into their own narratives, into their own gospels. And with the cup representing something about marriage, this would then lend that it's not just about judgment or wrath or condemnation or sin or purification. It's whatever it takes to bring a people underneath covenant. So that suggests that it's not the cup of wrath that Jesus is drinking. It's the cup of the covenant. This would suggest that the anguish that Jesus felt was not fear. It wasn't a matter of you're a burden and he's got to do this now. This is an expression of his own nature, his own sacrificial giving. This is an expression of who God has always declared himself to be. This goes back to Abraham, where God walked through the sacrifices on Abraham's behalf instead of Abraham walking halfway to meet each other in the middle. The sacrifice, that was supposed to be the tradition, but God took it upon himself, saying, it's going to be me to do this. When Abraham goes to offer Isaac, he doesn't take a lamb with him. He tells Isaac that God will provide the lamb. You read through the prophets are consistent that God is the one, the day of the Lord. It is the Lord who brings things to consummation. It is the Lord who vindicates. It is the Lord who pours out the wrath and redeems. Gethsemane is a full awareness of what it's going to take to redeem this bride, becoming curse, taking upon himself sin, learning obedience through the cross, as Hebrews 5 would say. The book of Hebrews uses the Day of Atonement language very, very heavily, calling Christ the high priest as well as the sacrifice. That is intentional. The Day of Atonement is about atoning for the sins of the entire nation of Israel, the entirety of the people of Israel. So this is Jesus looking at what it's going to cost to bear his bride, to drink of the cup, to say, I would rather die than live without you. It's no wonder that this happens in a garden. Just as Adam and the woman failed in the garden, so here Jesus is submitting to authority, that not from my will, but by yours, O God. And it's through obedience that we have this repetition of a garden scenario. When Jesus says, not by my will, but by yours, this is not hesitation. This is acceptance of the cost. This helps to reframe the cross past just, oh, he bore our sins, he took on the wrath. Those are absolutely valid. But this is also him bearing the price of the covenant, both the positives and the negatives of it. This is about union. This is about taking it upon himself to do whatever has to be, the stakes that are necessary in order to redeem a bride, so that way they might be one with him. So when we root it in covenant more than just judgment or wrath, we see that this is past just judgment, is past justice. This is communion. This is Emmanuel. This is God with us. This is God who continues to posture himself toward humanity. Sin didn't happen in the garden and suddenly God can't be around us. He still came in the garden and walked in the garden, and Adam heard him and hid. God came down to talk to Cain and Abel. He showed favor upon Abel's, but he spoke to Cain, even though Cain was still in sin. Cain's sin did not separate him from God, even after he murdered his brother. God comes down to the Tower of Babel. Here they are in rebellion, and God is walking around looking at this tower going, they're going to try to rival me. If this is the continuous trajectory of God, is toward humanity, toward his creation, toward redemption, then the cup of the covenant is the requirements that it takes for redemption, wrath included, but not solely wrath, not solely justice, not solely judgment, not solely sin, not solely becoming curse. There's more to it than that. There's marriage, there's union, there's a cost of communion. The price of love is to say, I would rather die than to be without you. Gethsemane is Jesus underneath severe pressure. It's a decision with significant weight. And Jesus' anguish is about knowing that full weight and that full cost and choosing to do it anyway.